Hello and welcome back to my channel today. Today I wanted to take the opportunity to share with you my own personal story, my own diagnostic journey with coming to find out that I have dysautonomia and POTS. Everyone's journey is different for how they came to discover what exactly was going on with them. I know for many it is a years-long process. They go through so many different doctors and specialists searching for answers, and it can take a really long time to find those. For me, I was fortunate. While it didn't seem like it at the time because it took 6 months or so for me to find a diagnosis, it seemed like forever, but I know that that's an actually very short amount of time compared to most people who are eventually diagnosed with POTS. I know that when you're chronically ill, you're on the search. You're searching for answers anywhere. You're not getting the answers from doctors, so you look online, you do research, you come to YouTube in the hopes of finding people with similar symptoms. And so my hope today is to share with you my own personal journey and my diagnostic journey, really, and the scenario surrounding what led up to my own personal diagnosis with POTS. And I really do hope that it can help you and provide you with hope that there are answers. There are people out there that do want to help and find solutions for you and get you on the road to feeling better. So if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that you already have a pretty good understanding of what dysautonomia and POTS is. And if you want more thorough information about the condition, I've made two videos, one all about dysautonomia, and then again a video talking all about what POTS is and what the symptoms are. So I won't go into too much detail with that today since I already do have those videos, but please be sure and watch those as a good resource for you to find more information on those. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. For me, my story began very suddenly. I had been sick with a viral illness for a few days. I was throwing up, I had fevers and chills and all the typical flu-like symptoms. And then you just expect to get better. For me, that wasn't the case. I think I felt somewhat okay for a couple days after the fevers went away, and then I just woke up one morning and I felt like, honestly, like I was dying. My body just did not feel right. I stood up out of bed. My heart started to race like crazy. I felt so lightheaded. I had severe shakes. I was so tremulous, and it was really, really scary. And something that made it extra scary was I was home alone with my 3 children, and they're pretty young, especially one of them he was just a little over a year old, I believe, at the time. And so I was really frightened. Now, I do have a history of anxiety and panic disorder, so I thought, maybe something's going on with that. Maybe I'm having a panic attack for some unknown reason. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that it was really scary. So I called my husband, and he came home from work and was just trying to talk me down, but I couldn't. Like my shakes were uncontrollable. Just this feeling of flight or fight was engaged, and it just wasn't letting up. We called my mother-in-law to come stay with me because my husband had to go to work that day. It was one of those days where there was no choice, but he wanted to make sure that there was someone there with me because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Both of us, I think, were under the impression at the time that it was just anxiety related. Anyway, so my mother-in-law came over, and it just wasn't letting up. My own mother from a couple hours away was visiting as well. The details are kind of fuzzy as far as when she came in relation to when this first episode started, but I know she did come within a couple of days. Anyways, I believe it was that first day that we decided to go to the ER because it just wasn't letting up. My mother-in-law drove me there, and my husband eventually came and met us there, and we went in. It took quite a while to be seen. I'm sitting there shaking like crazy. I explained my story, in the initial triage room, and they send you back out to the waiting room. Well, I was sitting there just, shaking beyond control, just so terrified. I didn't know what was going on with me. My heart would not calm down, and it was just really strange. And I just want to mention briefly too that for anxiety and panic attacks, for me, they were situational. They weren't something that ever happened to me really when I was at home. So it was really scary. So we're in the ER waiting to be seen. We finally get a room, and a couple people come in and out. I think they maybe took my vitals, not really sure. It's all really fuzzy. And then a nurse came in and was like, here's an Ativan, you're having anxiety, panic attack, take this and you'll calm down. So their solution was not to do anything further, no investigating, just give me a pill to calm down and off you go. So they gave me the Ativan, and they gave me something else called hydroxyzine to calm me down, and eventually it did. I was so drowsy that I was just kind of like out of it at that point. So my husband took me home, and I thought, okay, I just had some massive panic attack for some unknown trigger and I'm going to be okay. But that wasn't the case. Not at all. After the Ativan and hydroxyzine wore off, I just went right back into that loop of shaking, fight or flight response, feeling horrible, heart racing anytime I would stand up or get up. I felt horrible. I was in this extreme fog. My headspace was totally, whacked out. I was not myself. And I felt just terrified 24/7 because my body all of a sudden was just like, hey, I'm not going to work for you anymore. And I was just so scared of the unknown. And I would just sit outside, even though it was freezing cold. It was the middle of December, I believe. And I would sit there and shake. And I just wanted that cold air on me because it was just like, I would get hot, like so unbelievably hot inside, but yet cold. I can't explain it really. But I would just sit outside, just crying, like, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And I know it might sound dramatic, but it was really that intense. And so the next day, it continued, and I knew that something else was going on with me. It was so severe and wouldn't let up. I could not calm down. I could not stop shaking. My heart would not stop racing. Just all these different symptoms. And so we went back to the ER in hopes of maybe some further investigation, but we were met with the same exact result as the first time. Do my vitals. Well, actually, in the triage room, the doctor was like, whoa, your heart rate's in the 150s. And I was like, yeah. And people are telling me it's just like a panic attack. And then the nurse goes, well, that's kind of high for a panic attack. I think this might be something to do with your heart. So they did some actual tests, like a D-dimer to check for blood clots, EKG, and some blood work. So they did do a little bit more investigating that time. But we got to our room where they keep you for observation, and everything was normal. All my tests and labs were completely normal. And so they gave me another Ativan. Mind you, I'd never taken any kind of medication like this before. And so they gave me that, and it took a little while, but eventually I calmed down again, and they sent me home with, no answers. They did actually send down someone from the mental health ward who talked to me a little bit, but she didn't provide any answers or any more information. I had already been seeing a mental health professional for quite a while. She didn't really give me anything to go on because, at that point they just thought this was anxiety, and, follow up with your regular doctor, follow up with your psychologist, and, get these panic attacks under control, figure out what's going on with you. So that was the plan, I guess. Go home and try to follow up with my doctor. So after we got home the next day, I made calls to my primary care provider and my psychologist, let them know what was going on, and I think I got in pretty quickly. I explained to them what was happening, and my regular nurse practitioner, she really didn't know what it could be, what it was going on. You have anxiety or panic disorder, and so they automatically assume that again is what's going on. So then she told me to go see my psychologist and work it out with her. So that's what I did. I went and saw her, and initially she thought that I was going through a PTSD flare-up, and that explained some of my symptoms and how intense they were. Well, so we went with that diagnosis for a while. She even put me on an SSRI. I had tried one other in the past with some efficacy, but then I had gone off after I had gotten pregnant. So she started me on, I believe it was Zoloft, but I had horrible side effects with it. And after about 6 weeks with no therapeutic effect or any difference, I went off of that. So I was continuing to check in with her, and I had another appointment coming up, and I was feeling just awful. I had noticed that the heart racing was worse whenever I would stand up or try to walk throughout the house. So she could tell when I got to the office that something wasn't right. I could hardly walk from the waiting area into one of the rooms. I was out of breath and my heart was racing. And we got to talking a little bit more about the physical symptoms that I was experiencing. And we were talking, and all of a sudden it was like this light bulb went off in her head, and she was like, hold on a second. And so she started typing on her computer and doing research just for a couple of minutes. And she's like, Whitney, have you ever heard of a condition called POTS? And I was like, POTS? No, I've never heard of that. That's kind of a weird word. What does it mean? And so she explained, well, it stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome. And she read off some of the symptoms, and it was like she was reading off all my symptoms. And she was like, man, I think this is maybe what's been going on with you. It explains pretty much everything. And so I was so excited. I was like, wow, like someone's actually, taking the time to, think outside the box, outside the realm of just my anxiety, and really find out what's going on. So I was really excited for that. She encouraged me to go home and do my own research on it and see if that was something that I wanted to pursue. So that's what I did. I went home and just rigorously started researching POTS anywhere I could. Internet, YouTube videos just like this one, listening to people's stories, seeing if I could relate, and it was like, yes, I think this is what's going on with me. So then we had to decide, what was the next steps. After a few days of doing research on POTS and everything, I contacted my doctor's office and told her what my psychologist had suggested to me might be going on, and that I had a pretty good inkling that this was something I was experiencing. And so she referred me to an internal medicine doctor here locally, and kind of assured me that this doctor would have answers and a course of treatment. And so we were so excited because it had only been a few months since this all started, and I thought it was going to take forever or years based on what I was reading to get a diagnosis if it was in fact POTS. So my husband and I were very excited. We went to see this doctor, and we were, let's say, underwhelmed. She really didn't have any knowledge on what POTS was. She was kind of researching it in the office with us as if for the first time. I mean, I think she had heard of it, but she just wasn't that familiar with it or what to do in the case of someone having it. So she wanted to cover other bases and said, let's check your vitamin D levels, let's check your magnesium, and a few other things. Maybe let's start there. And so I was like, okay, well, that would be a simple solution. Maybe I just need more vitamin D, which I probably did because in the past I was always deficient in it. But it causing all these symptoms, I was highly suspicious that would be it, or something as simple as that. So we did my labs, went home, got the call that everything was within normal limits, except for my vitamin D was a little low, but we live in the Pacific Northwest, and it's pretty normal to be low on vitamin D, and that wasn't the answer, and I wasn't satisfied with that. So I talked to my doctor about that, and I was continuing to do research And when I was doing research on POTS, I came across other things that can cause similar symptoms, like things to do with your adrenal function and even like a rare tumor on your adrenal gland. And I thought, maybe this is it. You get all like investigatory and you think you're like this little doctor thinking that you have this X, Y, and Z or whatever. So you talk to your doctor about it, and she was like, actually, that makes sense. Let's do some labs on that. Let's check your adrenal function. And they do like a 24-hour urine test to see if that would lead to a suspicious adrenal function situation, if that makes any sense at all. But I thought, if this is a tumor, it's a benign tumor, but it causes a lot of problems on your adrenal gland and they can remove it. Okay, I don't want to have surgery, but I'm going to have surgery if this can fix me. So I was super hopeful. I was like, okay, I thought it was POTS, but no, maybe it's this adrenal tumor situation. Let's get that taken out. Well, I did all the tests and I was sure like it's going to come back and it's going to show that I have this going on with me. But once again, all my labs were normal. Everything was within normal limits. So I was like, well, I guess it's not that. It's POTS for sure. So then my doctor, after discovering, it's not your adrenals, she's like, well, let's go to a cardiologist. Your heart's racing like crazy. It's not, keeping a stable rhythm, really. Let's refer you to a cardiologist. So then I wait for that referral, and I wait to be seen by a cardiologist who is a couple hours away from where we live. We went to see him, and he did an EKG in the office. He checked my blood pressure sitting and standing, and they saw how my pulse was racing anytime I was upright. And so they knew something was going on, but they didn't know exactly what. They did in the office that day an ultrasound of my heart just to make sure everything was intrinsically fine with the heart itself, which it was. Everything was normal. And before we left the office that day, I was going to bring up POTS to the cardiologist because he hadn't mentioned it yet. And right before I was going to, he was like, this sounds a lot like a condition called POTS. Have I ever heard of it? Yeah. So we talked about it and everything made sense. He's like, yeah, I think this might be what's going on with you. But I'm not comfortable treating it. I don't know a ton about it. So you're going to have to be referred out to, there's not really a lot of specialists in this area. There may be one in about 4 hours away. And we can look into that. But first they wanted to do a diagnostic test, which is a tilt table test. And I plan on making a video all about what tilt table tests are and what my experience was. But it's a diagnostic tool where they have you in this bed and they rise you up to different degrees and they see what your heart does and your blood pressure, if any changes there. And so they wanted to schedule me for that. So that was the next step. They told me when I called to schedule it that it was going to take 5 or 6 months to get in because they only do, it was something ridiculous, like 1 a week, I think. So I was like, I have to wait for 5 or 6 months and, feeling so horrible with no answers. And so I was really discouraged by that. But when we got home a few days later, or maybe it was a couple weeks, I'm not sure, kind of fuzzy, someone called from the office and said, hey, can you come in tomorrow? We have an opening for a tilt table test. And I was like, yes, we're coming. So we went up there and we did the tilt table test. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because, like I said, I plan on making a full video on it. But let me just say, not fun, didn't feel good, but it did provide some answers. Now, initially, they can't tell you have POTS or this is, what's the word? This is, I cannot come up with the word. Sometimes I have brain fog. Consistent. This is consistent with POTS. But the nurse that did perform the test on me said that my heart rate went up to the 160s as soon as they raised me up, and it didn't go back down until they dropped me. So that kind of told me right then and there that, yeah, I have POTS. This is like totally consistent with that diagnosis. But I waited for the official report from the cardiologist after he reviewed it. That took like over a week for them to get back to me. And the report read that it was absolutely consistent with POTS, but further clinical correlation needed to be made. And so we needed to see one of the specialists that the cardiologist had talked to me about for further like final stamping. This is what you have and this is what you need to do. And of course, all of this is going on during the pandemic, COVID-19. I decided to go on a diagnostic journey during a pandemic. I couldn't pick a better time. But no, in all seriousness, I was trying to be understanding because I knew that the medical world was, being bombarded with COVID-19, and it wasn't going to be just a simple thing to get a referral and go see someone. So I was trying to be patient, but it was hard, as sick as I was feeling. But it took 2 to 3 months probably before we could finally see someone. The first person I was going to see, I guess, left the area, but we didn't know that. We were just waiting on a callback that never came. So my doctor then sent a referral out to another specialist who has a really good reputation and excellent knowledge on POTS. He's a nephrologist actually, but he also specializes in POTS. So we were actually excited to see him. So we did that on the 4th of June. So last week or so, we went and finally saw this specialist. We were so excited to finally have some answers. We didn't know how the visit was going to go. I was kind of nervous, but we got there, and right away he could tell just based on the first set of vitals, like, man, you got POTS, and it's pretty serious. So he talked to me all about POTS and all about the functionality, the mechanism of action in your body, what's wrong, and why your blood isn't circulating through the body, and why you're having all these symptoms, and why you're so sick. He told me that my case was a lot more severe than most people, but that there was hope, and he talked a lot about the natural methods to cope. A lot of things that I had already been doing, but not to the degree that I needed to be. So, and I'll be talking about that in other videos, all the things that I've done naturally to help alleviate some of my symptoms. But he also talked about needing to implement a couple of medications to get my body to feeling better, to improve my blood volume and my circulation, to get keep my blood pressure stable, because it tends to be a bit low, that's the lightheadedness, and to keep my heart rate a little bit more in normal range. So he started me on that, and that first medication is fludrocortisone, or Florinef, and I'm going to be doing a video on what I think about it. I've been on it about a week and a half, and without going into too much detail, I can tell a difference already. I was really nervous about it because it is a steroid. It's a mineral corticosteroid, so it's a little bit different than the typical steroid that you're probably thinking of. But I was nervous about it and nervous for side effects, but so far I really tell a difference in my energy level, in my heart rate. But it's along with these other natural things, like a lot of water and a lot of electrolytes and salt and all these other things that I'm going to talk to you guys about as far as coping with POTS. But it was so nice to finally have that stamp, you have dysautonomia and POTS, and I'm here for you. Let's put this plan of action in place. Let's follow up. Let's talk. I have a follow-up in 2 weeks to discuss next steps and see how I'm doing. So I actually finally feel, like I'm on, what's the word? Like, I'm not going to be healed or this be taken away from me exactly, but I already feel like I have a lot of my functionality back, like I have more energy. I'm filming this video, I have makeup on. These are things that I couldn't even do or have the motivation to do, but I'm feeling more motivated, and that's what I want to instill in any of my listeners, is that there is hope. There is hope for you, and I want to help you any way I can. I will answer any questions that you have. Please leave me a comment. Please subscribe to my channel and click the bell if you want to see when I'm making more videos, and just please leave me a comment. Tell me your story. I really want to relate to you guys and have a dialogue and keep that open, and let's learn together and let's spread awareness of POTS, because it's really, it's not well known in the public or in the medical community. I had seen one day I had saw 15 different medical professionals one time when I had to go to the ER, and only one person out of those 15 even heard of POTS and knew what it was. So we really need to spread the knowledge and awareness and help others who are suffering, and that's my goal. That's what I aim to do. So I thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully it helped you. I really hope that it did, and I will see you in my next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.